That said, we now have our NASCAR expert on the line, straight from pit row at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Mr. NASCAR expert, I hope you're having a great day. What are your thoughts? What's the latest coming from the NASCAR world? Any news, any storylines, anything that has your attention right now?
Well, I hate to start off my segment this way, but the first thing that has my attention is no sports today. Come on, we have Eldora tonight. We have the sprint cars racing for the biggest prize they've ever had, $1 million to the winner tonight in Eldora sprint car racing. And then you have the SRX series, which we can talk about a little bit later. They're kicking off tonight on ESPN. So come on, we have something to watch tonight. We have motor racing to watch today.
Please forgive me. Lord, let me just say, I was so wrong. Here I thought we had no sports on tonight, but Mr. NASCAR puts me in my place and says, hey, but Fumble Sports, get in the back seat because you don't even know. NASCAR's driving the way tonight. There is some sporting action on, and it has to do with the motors. So, NASCAR expert, then break it down for us. What are we going to be watching tonight? What should we be tuning our TVs to?
Well, two things you should be turning your TVs to. One is Flow Racing, and it's an app. Now, you need to pay for it, and I'm sure a lot of people may not have heard of it that haven't really followed racing, but this Flow Racing app basically streams live events from all over the country. You know, we talk about at the end of our segment about supporting your local short tracks. That's what Flow Racing does. Flow Racing goes all over the country, and they broadcast your local...
This is Flow Sports, correct?
Flow Sports. Yep, Flow Sports.
By the way, I actually have a friend who works at Flow Sports. I'm a big fan of it. To what Mr. NASCAR is talking about, Flow Sports does a really good job of broadcasting some of the sporting events that maybe don't get the kind of respect they deserve. I joke with my friend who works there that it's ESPN 8, the Ocho kind of broadcasting. It's bicycle racing. It's short track racing. It's sporting events that may not get the kind of attention. But don't be confused or don't be mistaken. It's good sports action, and it is something you can put your money on. So there's definitely something to be caught on Flow Sports every night. But you're telling me there are a few races we should keep our eye on.
Yeah, and to your point, Flow Racing or Flow Sports, they have a laundry list of everything from badminton, tennis, soccer, rugby, cricket. You can watch stuff from all over on there. But they do a great job with their motorsports program. So tonight on Flow Sports is Eldora. Eldora is one of the most famous tracks across the country. Tony Stewart, the former NASCAR driver, owns it, and he's putting on the Eldora Million tonight. And it's $1 million to the winner. And this is by far the biggest purse of any winged sprint car that you'll see. So last night was a smaller show leading up to tonight's big show, and then the King's Royals this weekend, which we can, we don't have to get into that. But tonight, Flow Sports, Eldora Million. You want to see some action on sprint cars? It's a 50-lapper feature. And if you've never seen a sprint car race actually in person or even on TV, they're absolutely phenomenal. They fly around that track at 13-second lap times. It's just incredible. I'm sure you've seen the cars, the open cage with the huge wings on top. That's what a winged sprint car is, and they're light with a shit ton of horsepower. So they just haul the mail around there. So Eldora is a really good one to watch tonight. And then we'll touch on it. SRX starts tonight. SRX stands for Superstar Racing Experience, and this is the third year in a row that they've started this series. Ray Evernham, who's a former crew chief, Donald Hawk, Tony Stewart, a couple of guys got together and started this series. And this series is kind of based on a series that used to run back in the 90s and early 2000s called the IROC series. And what the IROC series philosophy is we're going to have one company build all these cars, and we're going to build them identical, down to each bolt, each torque spec, everything's going to be the same. Then we're going to take them to the setup plate. We're going to have one guy set up all the race cars. And then we're going to take them to the track. We're going to have one guy shake down all the cars. They want these cars to be identical as possible. And then they would take drivers from all different mediums. They take drivers from IndyCar, from NASCAR, from drag racing.
So we're really seeing the best driver assert himself because we've eliminated the variables that would suggest the car's better, that puts the drivers maybe at a disadvantage or advantage. And we're saying, nope, we've eliminated the variables. May the best driver win.
Yep, that's 100% right. They want to see who has the talent from which series. And what this XRS, the IROC series ran at the tracks at Cup Rent. They would run Daytona, they run Indianapolis. What SRX has done is, like I said, I'm a huge fan of supporting local short tracks. They're going to these local Saturday night short tracks on Thursday night. It'll be Thursday night, every Thursday for the next 6 weeks at 9 p.m. on ESPN. And it's going to be like this week at Stafford up in Connecticut. Stafford's a half-mile, very famous short track that runs a lot of modifieds up there, which is another type of race car. And they're going to go there, and they're going to pack that place tonight. Stafford Speedway is going to be overflowing people tonight to get in there to see this race. And they're going to go to 6 other tracks across the country, and they'll throw a dirt track in there and help support the local short tracks. And what they're doing is they're bringing in past and current drivers. Where IROC was current drivers, they're bringing in past and current drivers. So you're going to have a laundry list of guys. Marco Andretti from IndyCar Series, who's now retired.
Oh, wow.
He won the series championship last year. He's in there. Greg Biffle, Clint Boyer, who's been recently retired.
I mean, these are names that the average fan, the average person who's been, even if you're not a big NASCAR fan, if you were just watching, let's say, NFL Sunday, you probably caught a couple of these names on Fox's broadcast. So these are names you can kind of get into, almost like a senior circuit of golf or tennis, where it may not be players in their peak, but still plenty of brand names that you will recognize.
Yeah, 100%. And Ron Capshaw is drag racing with Elio Castroneves. Elio is obviously a four-time Indy 500 winner, but he also won Dancing with the Stars. He might be more known for Dancing with the Stars than his four-time winning Indy 500. But, if they do a good job, and they'll start 12 cars, and if I'm not mistaken, it's between 6 or 7 guys will run full-time on this deal, and then they're going to rotate their celebrity or other drivers through. So Joseph Newgarden from IndyCar Series, Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, Haley Deegan, whose father, Brian Deegan, was, a motocross guy in the sports world. His daughter, Haley, now runs in the truck series, so she'll be racing. So it's something really cool. You can see different drivers every single week, aside from the ones that are running for the championship. But it's cool to see, like, the past drivers who've got out of, Kenny Schrader. Kenny Schrader is probably in his late 50s, still runs a ton of dirt races, but he's going to come run the SRX this year. So you get a really wide variety. It's pretty cool. They get, to travel across the country, and you get a chance for these local places to see the big stars of IndyCar, NHRA, NASCAR, come together to see them run. So it's pretty cool. And it's a 6-race thing, like I mentioned, and they'll start tonight at 9 p.m. and they'll run the next 6 weeks every Thursday.
I just wanted to touch on a name that you brought up, and it was in a couple different ways. Tony Stewart, obviously no longer in the Cup Series racing, but what he does for other forms of racing, for short track, dirt track, all of this, I feel like Tony Stewart is one of the great ambassadors and leaders of auto racing, and what he does on his own, putting his money behind it, getting in the driver's seat. We don't need to talk about his past. I know there's a lot there, but what is Tony Stewart's role right now in trying to drive the growth of auto racing?
So Tony Stewart has got his hands in a lot of different things right now. So his number one deal is he's part of Stewart Haas Racing in the Cup Series. They field Kevin Harvick and Ryan Preece, Eric Almirola, the Cup cars there, Chase Briscoe, and he's a part over there. Then he recently formed Tony Stewart Racing, which is a Top Fuel NHRA drag racing team. He got married to Leah Pruitt, who drives a Top Fuel dragster. So now he started TSR, and he has a Top Fuel car with Leah Pruitt, and he has a funny car with Matt Hagan. So he has that going on. Aside from his other Tony Stewart Racing branch of his sprint cars. Tony Stewart, obviously, his background is dirt racing, and he's a dirt guy from there, and he always will be a dirt guy. So he has sprint cars that run in that. And then we touched on it. He owns the Lower Speedway, which the sprint cars are running tonight, as we mentioned, for $1 million. He bought that Speedway when it was going to be pretty much be extinct and being leveled and turned into a strip mall. He bought it, resurrected it, and now look what he's doing. He's putting on this race tonight for these sprint car drivers from all over the world. They're coming from Australia, everywhere, to run this race tonight. So Tony Stewart, you're right. There's a handful of guys that are ambassadors for the sport to make it grow. And Tony Stewart's one of these guys that will always be back at the grassroots, roots level. And, like I mentioned, part owner of this SRX deal to make it grow, because the grassroots level is where it starts. The Denny Hamlins, the Kevin Harvick, Jeff Gordons, all these guys, they come from the dirt tracks. They come from the lower local short tracks to make it to the big time. So a lot of these guys haven't forgotten that. And Tony Stewart definitely is one of those guys.
And the reason I bring him up, obviously, there was the incident years ago where he hit someone on the track. That individual died, and it stained the reputation of Tony Stewart, especially with non-committed racing fans. It kind of became like the Jeopardy answer or the trivia question answer that was attached to his name. Obviously, both deserved and undeserved because of what happened. But I wanted to bring that up only because, like, you talk about individuals across sports, and you sometimes don't recognize what's being done behind the scenes to grow the game. In a strange kind of comparison, I think about what Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, what they have done for basketball, growing it internationally, going to China, going overseas to grow the game. Now, you're not doing that in auto racing the same way, but if you're Tony Stewart, it is going to places within the country and continuing to financially support, bring your brand, bring your audience to some of these tracks, some of these events, some of these circuits that, again, are the lifeblood of racing. It would be like saying if Major League Baseball got rid of single A or double A leagues. If you didn't have that, the ability to develop talent, the ability to grow the game, also the ability to connect with the average fan who may not be able to attend a race or may not be able to go to some of these events, see their favorite drivers. For those drivers and these events to become more localized and come to them, incredibly important for auto racing. So I wanted to give a shout out to Tony Stewart simply because, again, someone who may be misrepresented in the larger sports media community, but within the auto racing community is such a pivotal figure. And you think about, like, Earnhardt is a very big name, but I don't know if Dale Earnhardt Jr. is doing 1/10 behind the scenes to grow the sport in the way that Tony Stewart is. I'd kind of be curious to know what your take is on that.
Well, actually, Dale Earnhardt Jr. actually does an immense amount of work to grow the sport. He just keeps it.
He's even more under wraps about it.
He is.
Wow.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. during his career, he was very, very shy. He was an introvert. He went from his motor coach to the car for practice, from the car to the motor coach.
I always felt that way about Dale Jr. in that if his dad wasn't the intimidator, he never would have sought the spotlight. He never would have put himself. He didn't have that kind of arrogance or that kind of attitude. It was purely because of his name, in which every camera was pointed on him. But he seemed like someone where if he could have lived with his helmet on in the driver's seat, he would have.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. And when Senior was unfortunately killed in the 2001 Daytona 500, everyone looked at Junior like he was the guy.
Like it's your time to immediately mature into what your dad was, and it's like, but I'm a different person. I didn't ask for this.
That's exactly correct. And it took a long time for him to kind of come out of his shell. But if you would have told me sitting here in 2023 that Dale Earnhardt would have a very successful podcast and have a race team and all the things that he's done, I would have said, there's no way. He hates the media. He hates being in front of the camera.
If I told you that he was helping NBC with their Kentucky Derby broadcast
1,000%.
as an on-air talent, I'm with you. I would have been shocked. I just didn't realize behind the scenes that he was such an important figure in driving the growth of auto racing.
Yeah, he is. So him and his sister Kelly own Junior Motorsports, and they run Xfinity cars, and that, which is a level below the NASCAR Cup Series. We talked a little bit of that a few weeks ago. And he also runs a late model program out of his shop. And we talk about late models. These are the cars that run your local show tracks on Saturday night. So Josh Berry, who's actually going to be taking over for Kevin Harvick next year, ran Junior's late model for 7-8 years and slowly worked his way up. And now he's going to be Kevin Harvick this year. So he really develops the growth of the grassroots level to the point where him, Kevin Harvick, Justin Marks, a couple guys got together, Jeff Burton, they bought the Cars Tour. The Cars Tour is the biggest Southeast touring late model series right now in the country. They bought that series earlier in the year, and they're trying to revitalize a little bit more to grow it, to grow that grassroots level and bring guys in so they don't have to have a sponsor behind them. Talent can take them to the next level. So he has that going on. And let's be honest, that North Wilkesboro revitalization from the All-Star, that track was up there in Wilkes County just dead and fading away. Dale Jr. went up there with him and a few of his buddies. They went up there with a bunch of weed whackers and lawnmowers. They cleaned the place up. Weeds were going through the track. They cleaned the entire place up. He had iRacing come in, which he works very closely with, scan the track, to put it on iRacing, to get this younger generation familiar to what North Wilkesboro used to be for the Cup Series. And he started that driving force. And then look what it turned into.
And now it's on the Cup Series now.
Yeah, for the All-Star race. It's just incredible. So Junior does a lot of things. There's a lot of stories I could sit here and tell you about Junior that you'll never hear from behind the scenes. And that's because that's the way he likes it. He doesn't want to know that he helped this guy out and, Dale Jr. helped him. He doesn't want that notoriety. He just wants to be Dale Earnhardt Jr. But, yeah, Dale Earnhardt Jr. is 1,000% great for the sport and growing it as well.
It's interesting because, again, this shows my knowledge, and it's why we have our NASCAR expert on, because I hear about Tony Stewart doing so much to, again, grow the game at that grassroots level, at that dirt track level. I'm glad you shed some light on Dale Earnhardt Jr. so we could get a bit of insight as to all that he's doing. Again, we've got our NASCAR expert joining us, giving his insight on the world of racing. We're also going to talk about this weekend's race at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. But before we get there, you did mention there were a few more things you wanted to talk about tonight. Was it the XRK race?
The SRX race, yeah, we talked a little bit about that ESPN race at 9 o'clock tonight with all the drivers there. So that's definitely something to tune in. And then, like I mentioned, if you don't have Flow Racing or Flow Sports app, it is a paid service. But like you mentioned, there's so much stuff on there aside from auto racing. But the Eldora Million tonight is something that definitely want to keep your eye on for sure.
Now let's shift our attention to the Magic Mile, the 1 mile oval track that will be the focus of our attention for at least NASCAR fans in New Hampshire on Sunday. Give us some of your early thoughts just about the track, how it runs, what we should anticipate the track kind of offers for the drivers.
Yeah, so the Magic Mile, as they call it, it's a 1 mile flat oval, and it has pretty wide sweeping turns. They almost, account these turns as if you're driving a true natural road course. That's kind of how it is. You got to be really easy with the throttle getting in, and the key to this track is you want to be back to the throttle as quick as you can to get that drive off the corner to beat your competitor. And a lot of guys will fight a tight condition. What a tight condition means is you can't turn if you're in your car, you're trying to turn the steering wheel to the left, it just doesn't want to turn. It means the front tires just aren't gripping the racetrack for what you need to help that car turn. They'll fight that a lot here at Loud. So a good handling car that'll turn to the center of the corner and let you get back to the throttle quicker to get that drive up off is really what you're going to be fighting here. In years past, we have seen some surprise winners here. As recently as 2021, Eric Almirola won this race. But for the most part, there's about 4 or 5 guys that you can look at this week that are pretty much clear-cut favorites for this track. This just doesn't suit everybody. This is a track that some guys are really, really good at and some guys are really bad at. You're kind of not in between in New Hampshire. You're either pretty decent here or you're not. It's kind of a tricky place to get around. They used to race here twice a year, but with NASCAR growing and trying to expand different markets, they took a race away from New Hampshire. So this is the only race that the Cup Series will hold there this year. And the lobster's pretty cool. You'll see it in Victory Lane. They have a ginormous lobster every single year, live lobster that they give to the winner that holds it in Victory Lane. And some drivers like to hold it, and some drivers kind of shy away from it. So it'd be pretty interesting to see who takes on the checkered flag and if they want to hold that giant lobster in Victory Lane or not.
That's always funny to me because these NASCAR drivers are a bunch of good old boys from the Midwest and from the South. They don't know a lobster when they see one. So unless they're coming from Louisiana and some crawfish or something like that, yeah. I'm sure a lot of them are like, wait, what is this prehistoric thing you want me to hold? Can't I drink some milk? Can't I do something else? But yeah, that lobster. One other note, just as a New Englander, New Hampshire, why are you trying to take Maine's celebration? Never in my life have I been like, let me go get a New Hampshire lobster. Not once in my life. I'm just saying that as someone who grew up in New England. So Maine, this should be your racing trophy, but New Hampshire kind of subbed it from you. Anyways, getting back onto a more serious note, give me maybe a handful of drivers that you have your eye on to finish in like the top 10 who have the potential to maybe win this race.
So in the top 10 this week, it's kind of interesting to look around and see who you have. I think 2 guys, one guy that's been gaining steam. I have two guys here. One that's been gaining steam lately is Ross Chastain with Trackhouse Racing. He punched his ticket to the playoffs with a pretty good win in Nashville a few weeks ago. They run a Project 91 car with Shane Van Gisbergen at Chicago. He's the one that took the win in Chicago. He's a decent supercar driver, not full-time, but that was a Trackhouse car. Daniel Suarez, who also runs for Trackhouse, finished second last week in Atlanta. So there's some momentum building there in Trackhouse the second half of the year to find speed. And Chastain is one guy to take a look at. In the last 2 races at New Hampshire, he's posted 2 8th-place finishes. So he's been pretty decent here as of late, gaining speed. A top 10 or a top 5 could be on the horizon for Chastain. And one guy to look at, which I kind of wanted to think about fading this week, but it's hard to do, is Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick, obviously we talked about this swan song season. In New Hampshire, he's been pretty decent. At Phoenix this year, and I'll get to this in a second, at Phoenix this year, he finished in 4th and led 36 laps. And that's important because they are going to run the same tire compound in Phoenix this weekend in New Hampshire. So you can kind of go back and look at Phoenix and maybe see those guys that are kind of strong and say, okay, we're going to go to another flat, Phoenix is a little less than 1 mile, a little bit different characteristic, but flat mile, less than 1 mile oval with the same tire compound. And that's a huge deal for crew chiefs. If they don't have to try to fight a different type of tire compound every single weekend of what the tire may or may not do and they have a notebook on it, that's really big. So Harvick finished 5th last year at New Hampshire, and with that P4 at Phoenix, he's a driver to watch that could be in the top 10. I'm not saying fighting for a win, but I could definitely see Kevin Harvick notching the top 10 this weekend.
Okay, very interesting. By the way, for those that are new to Fumble Sports, our NASCAR expert will post an article with his picks probably later this week, probably tomorrow. I'll put that up on the website. That said, our NASCAR expert is incredibly humble, one of the most humble people I've ever met, and yet I've got to be his Flava Flav. I've got to be his hype man because our NASCAR expert has been red on fire hot with his picks this year, has done a brilliant job hitting about a 45-50% rate with his picks. And again, when you're picking NASCAR, you're getting all of your picks at plus money. So if you're doing anything better than like 20-25%, you are in the dough. Want to make sure all of you guys are paying attention, because I know a lot of people out there maybe not look at NASCAR seriously, or they don't think about betting it. Even if they're a fan, maybe they're a little hesitant. They don't know quite where to go. Our NASCAR expert is bringing you really good knowledge, so keep those ears open. We'll go to the other side of things. You gave us a couple drivers that you think could finish in the top 10. Who are some drivers that you're like, I ain't taking no matter what? I have no confidence in them finishing high this week.
So I have two guys for that category too. And the first one to take a look at is Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman missed a couple races earlier in the year with a fractured vertebrae from a sprint car wreck, actually. But he's out of the Hendrick stable. You have Kyle Larson, fire. Obviously, William Byron, 4 wins, one last week. Just absolutely fire. Chase Elliott still finding his footing, but he's been finishing in the top 5 the last few races. And then you got to have Alex Bowman out of this Hendrick stable, and he's just not been good this year. I don't know what's going on there. He's really struggling. So I look at Alex Bowman. He needs to win to get into this playoffs with the races that he missed. But, out of 11 starts here, he only has 1 top 10 in New Hampshire with an average finish of 24.3. So couple that with the fact that they just don't seem to have the speed this year, I would maybe stay away from that Hendrick Motorsports driver in the 48 car. And another one, I hate to do it, but it's Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace qualified 4th last year and finished 3rd in this race. But before that, in his 4 starts, his best finish was only 22nd with an average finish of 19.6. So we'll talk about some Toyotas that will be pretty strong this weekend, but I'm not sure Bubba Wallace is going to fit into that category this weekend.
Speaking of the drivers in the Toyota cars, which really stand out to you that you like?
Well, JGR. I think the JGR stable between Hamlin, Truex, and Bell, they've all been running really good. I think Tyler Reddick in the 2311 car, which is Bubba's teammate, might be okay this weekend, but I think he's still trying to find his footing. But right now, JGR, in my opinion, Joe Gibbs Racing, with the Toyota camp, they have caught, if not surpassed, the 3 Hendrick Motorsports cars this year. Hendrick was on a tear earlier in the year, and obviously William Byron still is on a tear. But between Hamlin, Truex, and Christopher Bell, if they're not even with Hendrick, they might be just pulling ahead a little bit at this point in the season.
So before I let you go, last thing I wanted to touch on was Christopher Bell. He was the most recent winner at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Is he someone that you have your eye on for potentially taking the checkered flag once again in New Hampshire?
Yeah, Christopher Bell is he's only had 3 starts at New Hampshire, and he won last year's race. And the year prior, he finished with the 2nd place. He also did a tire test this year, earlier in the year, and reports were he was pretty quick. And what happens usually is NASCAR and Goodyear will get together and they'll say, hey, we want to see if we can make a better tire for this track. And they'll take a driver from Toyota, from Ford, and from Chevy, and they'll take, tires and they'll do a tire test and chop up all the data. Christopher Bell did that tire test, and from reports that I've heard, he was a lot quicker than the other 2 cars that were there. So coupled with his previous 2-year finishes leading into this race, I think Christopher Bell definitely is going to be one of the favorites to take a look at.
NASCAR expert, I so appreciate you joining us every week to give us this insight. I know you always like to close off your segment with a call to action for our viewers, so I'll let you do that now.
Yeah, real quick, we talk about our picks, and we're at Fumble Sports. Our NASCAR picks have been fire as of late. Like you said, we just take it in stride. If there's meat on the bone, we'll take it, but you can't get too high and can't get too low. Just a couple quick things, and I've noticed that my picks is interesting. 2 times this year, I didn't cash on a top 10 driver. But both those times, we picked the winner of the race. So it's pretty interesting. I've cashed top 10 driver in every single race except for twice. In those 2 races, we ended up picking the winner of the race, which is pretty interesting, which I'd love to have the winner picked over top 10 drivers any day of the week. But I just thought that was an interesting stat. And the other thing to take a look at, too, is our blog that we post on FumbleSports.com is, our head-to-head selections. In NASCAR, you can bet on group selections, where it's a group of 4 drivers. You pick one, they have odds, whoever finishes ahead, or they have head-to-head. We've really been looking at head-to-head lately, and in 6 of our last 9, we've hit on the head-to-head. So that's something you can take a look at the end of our blog that we post there. But yeah, appreciate everyone listening and following us along at BuffaloSports.com. And like I always say, support local short tracks. And there's no way better to support local short tracks than like the SRX is doing tonight, or the dirt cars in Eldora. But anyone near you, I'm sure there's a short track within a 30-minute drive of where you live. Go check it out. Support this local business. Go support them. And you might see the next Jeff Gordon. You might see the next William Byron coming up through the grassroots system, because all these drivers have to start somewhere, and they start the local tracks at the grassroots level. So go support them is one thing, but also go there, learn the cadence of a race weekend, Like I mentioned before, even learning what the colored flags mean. You learn that stuff and you educate yourself on racing. You'll only be better when the pay window opens up. So definitely go support your Max.
NASCAR expert, I just want to say thank you again. I have been riding along with those head-to-head matchups. I have been taking your winners as well. And like I said, they have been funding some of my losing picks in other sports. So I want to say thank you for that, for helping me stay even and above over the course of the last few months. But additionally, thank you so much for the knowledge. And I want to echo what our NASCAR expert said. I was wrong, everybody. I got it wrong. Today is not the worst sports day of the year. It isn't dead entirely. It's not silent entirely, because we have auto racing on the docket tonight. Make sure you guys are checking it out. NASCAR expert, thank you so much. I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you. You as well.